Hi everyone, Jenna here. Welcome to Million Marker Live. Thank you so much for joining us. So over the last few decades, we have seen a 50% decrease in testosterone levels in men that obviously have impacted infertility rates. We discussed some of these reasons during our chat with Dr. Marc Sklar on IG Live. You can check out that in our IG reel feeds. So male fertility is a really complicated issue with many factors influencing it, including nutrition. So that's why we're super excited today to talk to Andy the Santis, RD and PH. Andy the RD. So Andy is a private practice dietitian from Toronto, Ontario, who also holds a master's degree in public health and nutrition from University of Toronto, Dalla Lana School of Public Health. He's also a well-published author with many cookbooks and everything ranging from general nutrition to male sperm optimization, many other things. So I'm going to... Here he is. Hi, Andy.
I can't down to go to my headphones, but it's okay. How's it going?
You sound fine.
Okay, nice, wonderful. So I didn't mean to interrupt your intro.
I just finished. So I mentioned that you're a practicing dietitian in Toronto, Ontario. You're also a really, really well-published author with many, many interesting cookbooks, which we're going to touch upon today. So thank you so much for joining us on your busy day. So tell us a little bit about your educational background, what led you become a registered dietitian.
Yeah. So it's so my background. Let me look on my wall. So I have a master's degree from University of Toronto from it is from June 2014. And why I got into nutrition, I guess, is pretty cliche. And it's funny enough because you mentioned my books. It's at least partially represented in my latest book, which essentially it's about like muscle building and like nutrition for fitness and stuff like that. And for me, you know, I got into nutrition because I wasn't, let's say, the healthiest kid growing up, and I kind of found when I started to learn more about nutrition, like it greatly improved my quality of life, as as you would imagine it does. And kind of from there, it was probably going to be the only thing I was going to do, So that's a hyper abbreviated version, but it's basically that classic cliche, that you kind of hear in the health industry sometimes.
But this is so cool because when I went through my dietetic training, I've always loved to have dietitian on because this is such a beloved profession. But we only we have majority girls in a program. There aren't that many guys, so it's really awesome to see there are male nutritionists, dietitians, RDs out there.
Yeah. I did an interview for a journalist the other day asking about that exact subject matter and like my thoughts as to why that is and how that affects the dynamics and things like that. It's obviously not necessarily a straightforward question to answer, but it's definitely fascinating. But there's a lot of male dietitians doing great things on social. But I mean, you don't have to look too far to find prominent male dietitians. So that's super cool.
Love it. So we had a past IG live with Dr. Marc Sklar, and which we touched upon how environmental toxins is impacting male fertility. So, but we know there's a larger role diet and other things can play. So, could you tell us more about what role does diet play in male infertility or fertility?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a subject of interest. And I think, the fertility question often gets looked at on the other side, but maybe less so on the male widest side to look into it. And it's really, what we're really talking about is, is the insights I found in the article that I wrote. And I think there's a few things. I think, first of all, a lot of the research is around nutrition intervention and then different factors of the sperm, let's say, right? So, I know we'll talk about this, but concentration, sperm counts, shape, their ability to that doesn't always translate necessarily to fertility outcomes, as you know. But yeah, and we'll talk about the specific nutrients, but there are definitely a set of nutrients that men who consume these more often tend to have more favorable characteristics in their sperm essentially, right? But it's less, the data is less so like, listen, you eat this food, fertility is going to increase. There's not that level of data, I would say. So, there's not always that next jump, but yeah, I mean, basically there's certain nutrients which have been associated with improved sperm health outcomes, basically. So.
Yeah. So like talk a little bit about the standard American diet and do you think that, a kind of standard American diet plus the toxin is actually like leading to decreased or increase in infertility?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, something like, and I'm pulling this number from the article that I wrote and the research I did, but something like up to half of infertility cases are contributed to either directly, which I think is pretty obvious, or indirectly by the male, right? So obviously there's a pretty big role to play there. So, environmental toxins I can't necessarily speak to as much, but look, the reality is a lot of the nutrients that are of interest are foods that we could describe cliche as quite healthy or as otherwise elusive nutrients like omega-3. Like if you use omega-3 as an example, right? I mean, omega-3s are found in a very small subset of foods. So it's very easy to have what outwardly appears a very balanced pattern of eating and not have those foods. You know what I mean? And the other ones, I'll just list them instead of speaking about their generator. I will talk about more specifically. Zinc is another one, which is increasingly popular. Like zinc supplements, can be underconsumed in the population level, and zinc supplements are among the top selling supplements on Amazon, which is more so to do with the fact that they're associated with immune health and stuff, and that's a byproduct of COVID essentially. But if you look at zinc and selenium, like these are found in certain things like nuts and seeds and legumes, which a lot of people don't consume or don't consume sufficiently. So I mean, omega-3 from the plant version certainly is found in nuts and seeds as well, certain types. So yeah, I mean, it's very easy to omit those foods.
Makes sense. We're gonna get into like omega-3s, selenium, zinc, and all these a little bit later. So you had I love you have a lot of funny posts making this fun. So you had a really great post about sperm health that really made us laugh. Maybe you can explain this caption to our viewers, like, nutrition for sperm health because you want your boy swimming more like Michael Phelps than Ryan Lochte. So please explain.
Yeah. I don't know how I come up with this stuff. I mean, the irony being that Ryan Lochte got all sorts of antics, so he was also a high level swimmer. But if you pick it up someone else, no one's gonna know who it is. So yeah, I kind of came up with that on the spot. But yeah, because the cliche for sperm is like motility, their ability to move and stuff is relevant to fertility. And Michael Phelps being the greatest swimmer of all time, certainly the greatest male swimmer of all time. And then you have Ryan Lochte, who was kind of the guy who was always like second or third best to him. And yeah, so I just thought that was like a pretty sweet little but I love making analogies and I love the wordplay when it comes to nutrition messaging. So yeah, I'm glad you
love it
because I'm sure some people would have perhaps missed that analogy if they weren't familiar with Olympic swimming.
Well, it's good education because the analogy really increases the translation of the message, which is like there's like such a lack of this translation in science. So no, I love it.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you do, and I like to think that that it's humor and stuff like that is is a useful educational tool. So yeah.
Yeah. So then, what are some of the best nutrients for Michael Phelps' sperm?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, in the research that I've done, it kind of comes down to four specifically, or one of them's a little more broad. So I mean, the first, like we had discussed, being omega-3. Again, omega-3s are kind of famous for their their anti-inflammatory capabilities. Again, the thing with omega-3s, they really aren't found in very many foods. You have certain types of fish, salmon probably being the most notable, but sardines as well, mackerel, trout, and then you have certain types of nuts and seeds, relatively like walnuts, flax seeds, chia, hemp seeds. Soy has a little bit of omega-3 as well, but that's a relatively small group of foods. So we have omega-3 is number one, and then zinc and selenium, which are both interesting. They're what I observed looking at the data around sperm health is like these nutrients that maybe are involved in some capacity with like DNA synthesis, selenium both are. So there's definitely something there where like the nutrients that are protective against DNA or play a role in DNA synthesis were like noted, right? And in the observational like data that there is. So that's when they found that guys who had adequate zinc and selenium intake were more likely to have healthier sperm parameters. And the final group, which is more broad, which is just like dietary antioxidants. So the cliche, that's the things that come from like the different colors of vegetables specifically. Intake of those foods is associated with better, sperm health parameters. So, and again, I mean, antioxidant content of vegetables and stuff like that directly related to like DNA protection and all sorts of things of that nature. So it makes sense.
So what are some like the best sources of selenium and zinc?
Yeah, I mean, so selenium, I mean, the cliche, like Brazil nuts are like the kind of cliche where like a very few of those will give you, a large percentage of your daily selenium intake. Tofu and shrimp, I believe, are sources of both. Shiitake nuts are sources of both. Thin found various meat products, but it's also found in lentils and sunflower seeds. So lots of nuts and seeds, which are very often underconsumed, very, very important groups. You know what I mean? But tofu actually contains both, funny enough. And, I'm always, and this is a great opportunity to discuss tofu at the very least because, I talk about soy often because it's understood. And, very often people will look at soy and think it's, not conducive to, good male health outcomes, perhaps especially in the sexual category when like all the best evidence is contrary to that, right? So, there you go.
Right. So a lot of people, American diet is also heavy on omega-6 compared to omega-3. So like a lot of people often get confused, like, what are the difference between omega-6 and omega-3?
Sure. Well, I think primarily the difference is, where you're finding these foods. You know what I mean? Omega-6 is very often found in vegetables and things of that nature, or foods that contain large amounts of them, which doesn't always necessarily by default, mean they're bad, but omega-3s where omega-3s found in nuts and dries of nuts and seeds, which are probably among like the more underrated food groups with amazing health outcomes, high in potassium, magnesium, zinc, selenium, all these things that people tend to not get enough of. And then in fish, which is like the only dietary source of vitamin D. So it's as much to do with that, I think, as anything else. Obviously, then on a physiological level, it gets more complicated. But broadly speaking, omega-3 associated with like anti-inflammatory messaging in the body. Omega-6 more so, perhaps pro-inflammatory. It's obviously more complicated than that, and probably even more complicated beyond the way I even interact with it, because it's not super relevant to the average client. But, broadly speaking, I mean that's what I would say.
Awesome. So like protein obviously is also really important. Do you have any recommendations shopping for good protein?
Well, I mean, my main messaging around protein is that, for most people, the number one thing they could do to improve their health is to diversify their protein intake. And in the context of sperm health, I mean, more or less that also holds true because we bring up fish, we bring up tofu. I brought up lentils already as source. Obviously, in that family, legume family of foods I've spoken about regularly. I just released like a diabetes cookbook, and legumes obviously very important. So like, I mean, diversity in protein intake, we don't need to overcomplicate it. Diversity in protein intake will do wonders for you, regardless of what your concern is. You know what I mean? And if you don't know how to pursue that, well, you can work with a dietitian to figure it out, you know?
What about people consuming, like a grass-fed beef versus conventional? Like how does this hormone-free protein comes into play?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is not that particular area in terms of like the differential effects on health outcomes or sexual health outcomes. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm overly familiar with that. Certainly, it's interesting. The problem with that, one of the reasons why I haven't really looked into that is that the economics of that make it prohibitive in terms of like the amount of people it's relevant to. So when that case, I'm automatically less interested in looking into it. But I mean, if that's something you look into, I'll be happy to hear if you have any insights on that. I've not really looked into that closely. Although honestly, it is an increasingly relevant thing, especially when we get like podcasters and different people talking about how they're into that stuff. But I'll be honest, it's not something I've really looked into closely.
Yeah, makes sense. So like if you're planning like a meal tonight, if you're planning to make a baby tonight and then having a meal before that, so what will be on your plate?
It's be enough to meet, yeah, the spur health outcomes. But let's go along with that line of reasoning. Let's say salmon with salmon with lentils, and let's just pick broccoli or Brussels sprouts, and let's put some like walnut shavings on or something for extra omega-3s. Why not? Let's throw something like that. You know, Probably the individual that you're intending to, make a baby with should also like the meal. That's probably more important than the effects on sperm health in that particular context. But yeah, there you go.
Love it, love it. We didn't have this prepared question in there, but I really want to ask it. Tell us about all the books, some example of all the books that you publish, because I know there's a lot of recipe, just like a lot of good information there. And then you also go beyond like nutrition and workout plans and other things in your book. So tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, so I mean that's my most recent one. So I mean I have you know what? I keep giving away. Here's one. I mean, if you want to talk about sexual health outcomes, I mean, like this is my low cholesterol book. This is one of my first books. I mean, high cholesterol is one of the most common reasons for medication. It's also a risk factor for erectile dysfunction. It's one of the biggest risk factors. So, and how do you resolve high cholesterol? Well, lentils, which I just mentioned, are very effective and generally diversifying your protein intake is effective. My most recent book does have a workout component because it's like essentially like an entry point, like for exercise and nutrition for people who want to, again, they want to add on some muscle. They have some goals around fitness. So like it's called like the macro cookbook for men happens to be the name. Ironically, I don't have copies on me in my office. In this work from home era, I'm not even here as much as I used to be. But yeah. So that book has, it helps you gives you a sense. It has like a couple of 7-day meal plans there, and it has a couple of different workout iterations. It just gives you a sense of like, macros. What does that really mean to someone who's trying to pursue these goals? Like, how do you understand how much protein do you need? Do you need 1 kilo or 3, which for the average person is hard to discern if you're just like Googling or going on bodybuilding.com. You know what I mean? So that's really the role that my most recent book fills in my
Love it.
mind.
Love it. So now let's talk about your practice because you just mentioned you're going to your office. So what does a session with you look like?
Yeah, I'd like to think hopefully I think it's a good time. But I mean, most importantly, like I like to pride myself on the fact that, if you come to speak to me, you have a goal for yourself in mind, and, my job is to help you fulfill that. You know what I mean? And not only just the goal, but also the expectation of how to reach the goal, because, different people envision taking different paths to their endpoint. Now, it doesn't mean that those visions are always correct, but it's important for me to respect that as much as possible. So I would say something like that. Yeah, are there going to be, cracking jokes or making light of things is not a default, professionally for me. But look, if there's an opportunity, if I feel it fits the situation, okay, sure, we'll that would be an aspect of it. But people, a lot of people come into my office or like speak to me. They know me on some level. They'll say, sorry, Andy, I don't like kale, or I feel very comfortable speaking to you about my poop because I've seen all your posts on Fecal Friday. So I'll hear comments like that pretty regularly, and it's a lovely thing.
This is awesome. Because I know you also have like 6-week sessions in your practice. So what do people get out of the 6-week session? How do you follow up with them?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that is more like superficially to help people envision like what it looks like. I have people who talk to me once every 2 weeks for 5 years. I have some people who I'll just work with on a shorter basis. So what you see there on my website, I probably need to update my website, to be fair. So stuff that's just more a reflection of what it might look like cost wise to work with me over that period of time. It's very rare that that's really like capacity in which I'm working with someone. It's much more likely I'll talk to someone indefinitely. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, it comes down to the client and, of the process financially, as well, and the amount of support they want and they need.
So you can really personalize a plan for the particular clients.
Yeah, it takes time, right? I mean, it's what it is. Different people, different people, like, you talk about expectations and goals. Some people just need to have a few of their misconceptions cleaned up, and otherwise they're great. And some people, I appreciate, they really do need prolonged support and constant feedback. And, and there's equal joys in working with both types of individuals, and it's all good.
Awesome. Love it. So I know that, so we have your handle, everything promoting this post so people can follow you at Andy the RD. But so people,
there's more juicy details and references that kind of build on today's conversation. So I recommend checking that out.
Yeah, love it. So if people wants to buy your book, how do they find your book?
Easiest way, honestly, is to go to Amazon.ca and just type in Andy, or type in not Andy, but sorry, that's definitely not gonna find Santis or Andy, and then the subject you're looking for. So Andy acid reflux, Andy workout book, Andy dash diet, Andy cholesterol. Like that's what I do when I want to my books. So you know what I mean? I go on Amazon, I type that. If you type my first name and nutrition topic in Google, like I'll probably come up realistically. It's just the way it is. Like just Andy. If you type in Andy, I don't know, sperm health, probably my article on sperm. Like, let's just test it right now, just for the sake of it. Okay. I'm just gonna type in Andy. Just for fun, I'm gonna put Andy sperm and just see if I. So okay, yes, my article comes up 5th on that search query. So there you go.
Awesome. Awesome.
Pretty random. You know what I mean? Just
Awesome. So people can definitely find you. And then if they want to book a session or anything, they can also go onto your website, andytherd.com.
Yeah, they can book it directly through my website. Very often people want to exchange an email or have a call, and that's perfectly fine as well. It's all good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is like awesome information. Just love your book. So everyone, please check out Andy's book. Lots of great information and many, like a wide range of topics. Love it. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great chat.
Yeah, great chat. Thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.